was always the Jags.
It's always the Jags. It's always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, your number one podcast for all things Jacksonville, all things Jaguars, all things Duval. So this week, I know it's been a minute, obviously. I know it's been a minute. I've been crazy busy, first of all. And just kind of, once the draft happens at the end of April, May is such a terrible month for football. And then we get the schedule release, right? And so I should have done a video a little bit earlier on the schedule release. So that's going to come out next week. Because I need some more thoughts with the schedule to really put them together. So I'm going to drop my video about the schedule release next week. Make sure you stay tuned for it. Today, I'm just going to do like a little off-season overview for the Jaguars. Off-season review, maybe grade the whole thing. Free agency compared to the draft. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the news that's been floating around the Jaguars. And just kind of wrap all that up, the offseason in a neat bow. And then we're going to move on to 2026 and start talking about the schedule that the Jaguars have in front of them. So, obviously, the season did not end the way the Jaguars wanted to. Some people thought the Jaguars were on their way to make a Super Bowl run, let alone a playoff run. And, I mean, again, to make the playoffs after missing the last year, to flop your win total from 4-13 to 13-4 is a huge accomplishment in and of itself. And the fact, and like James Gladstone had a very busy first free agency as GM last year. And that was before he had any results of what Liam Coen was going to end up doing. And again, Liam Coen was brought in before Gladstone. And again, there is something to be said that our quarterback was hurt last year, but also we weren't winning games while Trevor Lawrence was healthy. So there's a lot to be said for the turnaround. And because of that, like the Jaguars took the approach of continue the ship, it feels like. Meanwhile, we look at the Rams and they went for the approach of go for broke. And they changed Jared Verse, who's already probably a top 10 defensive player in the league, and swapped him out for the number one defensive player in the league. And they might get one of the greatest defensive players of all time back from retirement because of it. So the Rams are in the push the chips in mode, and the Jags are in the run it back mode. And I guess the question is, what are we running back? Because nobody wants to run back another wild card exit. Like, it feels unnatural to say this, right? But obviously the Jaguars were good enough to get to the wild card round and win, but they were not good enough to advance. And so if we look at our offseason, our goal is like, okay, how do we get past that? And it feels like James Gladstone is just kind of like, well, let's do the same thing. And their thing is, the way we'll get past that is another year in the system for everybody. And getting Travis Hunter back will make a big deal. I think we win that game if Travis Hunter is healthy and playing cornerback for us. I really do. So that's the question that's kind of on every Jaguars fan's mind is like, are we running back another wild card exit? Or are we truly prepared to make a deep playoff run, especially after losing pieces? So again, we go through free agency. No big names. Jaguars courted Jake Bobo. Didn't work out. We lose Travis Etienne, who we've been saying his name wrong for all this time, and Devin Lloyd in free agency, right? So those are, and then we pick up Chris Rodriguez, couple of re-signings here and there. Not much going on in free agency. As far as our own guys, there were a couple that we retained. I believe we brought back Tim Patrick, which is good. It's good to have him back because we need that. It's nice having that big body target. And while he did make some mistakes through the year, I feel better with our wide receiver room with us having him on it, especially being a veteran. Because he also did make some nice plays last year. We also extended Trayvon Walker, which is a very interesting move. And then we decided not to trade Walker Little, which I thought we were going to do, but I guess James Gladstone is going for depth on the offensive line. And again, I look at that Trayvon Walker extension. I don't think it was a terrible idea. I think he got paid about what he's worth, maybe on the peak of what he's worth, but I think he did get paid about what he's worth. My question is, if the number was $75 million guaranteed, could we have made that work for Max Crosby? Because guaranteed money is the only thing that matters in a contract. So that's the question, right? And now again, 75, it probably would have had to been 75 million guaranteed over 2 years for Max Crosby. So like 3-year, $100 million deal where 75 is guaranteed, instead of Trayvon Walker getting a 4-year, $100 deal where 77 is guaranteed over the 3 years. So it can kind of make a difference then. But again, if you're telling me you can trade Max Crosby, you can trade Trayvon Walker and maybe BTJ for Max Crosby, I'm still wondering if that would have been our chips move to be like, hey, we are close and on the precipice. Let's move some chips in and get a little bit closer. It doesn't mean that like if we didn't win the Super Bowl this year, it would have been a failure, you know. But like, look at the Packers. They made that move for Micah Parsons, and now they're not even favored to win the Super Bowl at all. And that move is almost going to look like a bust. So like, there is some rhyme or reason to it, but especially when you've got assets and you've got players, and you've got players that are going to need money anyway. Like Trayvon Walker needed to be paid anyway. I hate to say now is the time to offload him, but it kind of was if you can upgrade him. And again, we're still seeing, is BTJ that superstar? Is he the field stretching element necessary for Liam Coen's offense? Or can Travis Hunter do what he does? Especially if we went full heavy on tight end. So a lot of questions in the free agency period, but obviously we went into free agency. We lost more than we gained. And that's just the fact. No players that we gained are going to make up for the loss of Etienne and Lloyd. Now, a lot of free agencies are like this, but that's just the fact of the matter. And then we go into the draft. James Gladstone has a very unusual draft. I do think we got sniped. I do think Gabe Jukas was going to be our guy, but he has an unusual draft in that he picks a lot of players that were expected to be on the board much later. And again, I understand James Gladstone's beaten to his own drum. That's totally fine. But I think there's an element of knowing what other teams are going to do, and taking a flyer on somebody who everybody has as highly regarded, even if you have another guy that you like better. To me, if I've got two prospects, prospect A, everybody loves, but I don't really love. But he has traits that everybody love, I guess. Like some traits that are kind of undeniable. But I have another guy that I just like better. But nobody really likes him. But I like him better. I'm going to take this guy higher, and then I'm just going to take this guy later when I know he's going to be there. Now, the draft is obviously a crapshoot. You don't necessarily know when anybody's going to be there, but Nate Borkircher was going to be there later. So, but hey, that was the guy that James Gladstone wanted. The way he made that pick so confidently makes me wonder if even if Gabe Jukas or Cassius Howell or R. Mason Thomas, if any of those guys were on the board, if we would have taken them. I'm starting to think that we would have left them there, but I don't know. I do think that the designated pass rusher was something that we were looking for, and I don't think we came away with it this offseason. So again, as we continue to go through the draft, I will say that like if you swap the Pregnon pick and the Borkircher pick, the entire draft looks so much better because Pregnon was viewed as a steal and Borkircher was viewed as a massive overreach, and Pregnon was kind of viewed as a massive steal. If you switch them, Pregnon is only a slight overreach, but most people would say he was the best guard on the board at that point. And Borkircher would have just looked like, oh, the run on tight end started. And there is a chance that Borkircher may not have been there because there was kind of a run on tight ends that the Texans started and the Rams kind of followed up. So if Borkircher was the number one tight end, might have had to take him there. Like if you swap the two, I do think the draft looks fine. And again, to me, if swapping where two players got and you got them both, that means overall, like you shouldn't hate the Borkircher pick if it would have been fine taking Pregnon there and taking Korcher a little bit later on. Like either way, it's fine. You see what I mean? Like if you swap them, like there's no point in giving one a D and one an A plus if you swap their positions. This one is a B. They both become B pluses. In that case, they're both just B pluses, right? So that's kind of where I end there. But again, there's a lot of players later on in the draft I just did not agree with. Did not agree with Pressie Williams. Did not agree with Albert Regis. Did not agree with that safety. Feels like, and we did pick up a good wide receiver. I think Tanner Koizl will kind of be a nice pass catching tight end, but it's a mystery, and we'll have to see how it all plays out because it doesn't make us feel very confident. And so that's the question. Is like, did we get better? Especially because Ventrell Miller is going to be our coverage linebacker. Again, I'm not sure why we take that safety when Kyle Lewis is a guy who can play linebacker and safety. So if and he can do coverage really well. So like, it's kind of like two needs at once. So it's a confusing draft. It's a confusing draft, but Gladstone. The thing is, Gladstone showed himself to be a capable GM and putting a team together in free agency. His drafting has yet, like he showed he knows how to draft in LA. I'll give him that, because remember, he got Byron Young. He's the guy that got Jared Verse. He's the guy that got Kobe Turner, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of back end picks, because the Rams didn't have first round picks while he was there as the director of drafting, and he proved that he can draft in LA. Hasn't quite proven it in Jacksonville, just because if we look at our past draft class, it's a big unknown. I like the Wyatt Milan pick. We don't really know what he's going to be. We don't know what Caleb Ransall is going to be. We barely know what Travis Hunter is going to be. But we would not have had the season we had without Travis Hunter. And I'll say that. But we barely know what Travis Hunter is going to be. And then there's a couple of later round picks from last year that, again, we still just don't know. And I can't even think of anybody past Caleb. Oh, yeah, Jack Kaiser. We don't know what he's going to be. Is he going to be helpful? Anybody in that draft, we just have no idea. So this kind of offseason is kind of a mystery. I mean, and again, I hate to give it a grade of like a D or a C, but clearly the idea was replenish depth and run it back. And I think as Jaguars fans, we're not sure if that's the right answer, because we don't know if getting over the hump is another year in Liam Coen's system, getting the people that we already have to simply play harder or be more comfortable within the system. Now, retaining our coordinators is a huge win, so maybe that can bump the offseason to more of like a C. But like a lot of teams, like the Ravens can look at their team and be like, oh yeah, we got better. The Bengals can look at their team and be like, oh yeah, we got better. I don't know if we can look at the Jaguars and clearly say, oh yeah, we got better. Now, we should still be in the conversation because we are still a 13-4 win team. Our team didn't get gutted, right? We're still a 13-win team that just won the division, and we should be in the conversation for the playoffs and the Super Bowl. We should be considered a serious playoff contender. And maybe Liam Coen and James Gladstone have a secret psychology working out where the fact that this draft will be looked at so poorly and this offseason will be looked at so poorly will fuel the narrative that the Jaguars aren't better, which will trigger more disrespect. Because all that's done, like, the Jaguars were feeding off disrespect the entire year. The entire year. Perceived disrespect of being a bottom feeder team. Liam Coen didn't like it. He took it out on Robert Saleh. We took it out on the Chiefs. We manhandled the Chargers and just had them feel our wrath. And that seems to be Liam Coen's style. Problem is, that doesn't work if you're a winning team, because no one's going to disrespect you if you're winning. So now that we've gone to that winning season and gone to the mountain, it's like, okay, how do we keep it going? Well, there's still disrespect everywhere just from this offseason. Jaguars didn't do enough in free agency. They're not good enough to weather the losses of Etienne and Lloyd when they both did so much this year. And they really did. And those losses are going to sting. We also re-signed Monteric Brown in our offseason review. I forgot to mention that as well, which might have been better than drafting a cornerback because they ended up going a lot higher than I was anticipating. But anyway, back to the main point. There's a lot to be pissed off at if you're a Jaguars fan or player. There's a lot of disrespect. People don't have the Jaguars in the Super Bowl conversation anymore. People don't even have them in the conversation to win our division, to repeat as division winners. Everyone's looking at the Texans because they feel like the Texans did more. And so you have a lot of ammo to work with if you want to keep running the disrespect narrative. And maybe that's the whole plan. And maybe, finding these diamonds in the rough and picking them a little bit out of order helped fuel that narrative. I don't really know. I just want to see what happens on the field. And that's the part that we all care about. So it's kind of hard to give an off-season grade. Again, a C may not matter as much, but if it helps fuel the narrative and helps us win games next year, obviously it's going to be a success. You know what I mean? So we just don't know. And there's only one way to find out, and that's just to wait and see. So, and there's a lot of different narratives floating around, like the idea that Travis Hunter, that the experiment of a two-way star is over, as Kyle Brandt mentioned on his show at one point. It's crazy. It's absolutely ridiculous because no, it's not. Like, he's going to be a full-time cornerback, right? And he's still going to play some wide receiver. He's a full-time cornerback, but he's going to be a part-time wide receiver. And eventually he'll be a full-time wide receiver. The point is, we don't need him to be a full-time wide receiver right now. we've got 3 starting wide receivers: Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, and Brian Thomas Jr., who I would argue all 3 of them are better at wide receiver than Travis Hunter is. But Travis Hunter is a better cornerback than all the cornerbacks on our roster. So you know what? If Travis Hunter goes out in camp and is a better wide receiver than any of our starting 3 right now, he will pass them on the depth chart, and we will bench Parker and play Travis both ways. But for right now, he's the best cornerback on our depth chart, so he's going to be our starting cornerback, our number 1 cornerback, and we're probably going to work him there the most. And again, he can still come in the offense. And again, I do like that James Gladstone is loading up on receivers, because I like Travis Hunter as our 3rd wide receiver, in that if we run some 2 tight end sets, we can take him off the field. But basically, that wide receiver 3 spot, I would like it if that was Travis Hunter's spot. So that way he knows what his job is in any alignment. Like, it's just the wide receiver 3's job. But again, he's not on, like, the wide receiver 1 is on the field every offensive snap. I think Travis Hunter needs to be on the field for every defensive snap. But you don't have to be on the field for every offensive snap, because you can run 2 tight end sets. And sometimes a running play, I don't know how good Travis Hunter is as a blocker, but Brian Thomas Jr. is a fantastic blocker because he's fast and he's willing to block. So he'll run down the field and knock that safety out of the way, right? And same thing with Jacoby Myers. He's just crafty, right? So, like, it's okay if Travis Hunter isn't on the field for running plays. That doesn't mean our offense. Now, again, you don't want it to be a telltale sign that when Travis Hunter gets off the field, they're going to run the ball. But that's the beauty of having 2 tight end sets and 2 tight ends that can block and catch, because that's how Travis Hunter goes off the field. They think, oh, shoot, it's going to be a running play. Stack the box. Brenton Stranger's wide open. Bam. Killed you. You know what I mean? There's lots of things we can do. But the idea that the experiment is over is so stupid. He's going to be a full-time cornerback this year. He's going to be a part-time wide receiver. Maybe he only plays 20 or 30% of the snaps on offense. That's fine. Next year, we're going to have to extend Brian Thomas Jr. or Parker Washington. And whoever doesn't get extended is going to end up traded or leaving. And then Travis Hunter will become the wide receiver 3. And he will be full-time both ways. A lot of people wanted to see it in his rookie season. I wanted to see it in his rookie season. He got hurt. So we're going to start off by seeing him become the best cornerback he can be. And then we're going to add some wide receiver on top of that. And that's the way it's going to go. And I still think that makes him worth 2 first-round picks because we made the playoffs. So it doesn't matter. We made the playoffs, so it was worth it. Now, again, I do think we should have been able to keep our second, but that's more on the Cleveland overcharging us than, especially when you look at this Jared versus Myles Garrett trade. Like, Myles Garrett is worth 3 or 4 first-round picks, right? Probably 3. You could argue that Jared Verse could be worth a couple of first-round picks. And so then the Rams paying Verse and a first, maybe, and then they threw in a second and a third. So you could argue that that's probably worth it. Depends on how you view Verse. But especially looking at that trade, that feels more fair than the Travis Hunter trade does to me. Maybe if we had given the Browns a player or something, but I don't know. That feels more fair to me. And then the Tyson Campbell, Gregory Newsome trade just kind of, I don't know if it looks worse day by day, but I thought we'd be getting out of that contract by doing the trade, but we triggered the dead cap instead. And so by triggering that dead cap, we still have Tyson Campbell's, like, we're paying him $19 million to play for the Browns. So it's kind of like, why? But that was during the season, not during the offseason. So let me know your thoughts about the Jaguars offseason as a whole. This was just kind of an offseason review where I could kind of give my thoughts on it. Next, I'm going to break down the schedule, tell you what games the Jaguars are winning and what games you can potentially see me at if you're there in the area. So I'll also try to do some more stuff during the summer. I know May, June, July are like the hot. June and July, especially after the schedule comes out, are the hardest months for any football fans because it's like, what's the point of anything until the season kicks off? I don't even know. Like, what do you do? So let me know if you'd like to see me review some of my favorite movies that I've seen on this channel, maybe during the summer, like, summer blockbuster season. The Mandalorian Grogu was great. I'm going to go see Supergirl. I'm going to go see Spider-Man Brand New Day, obviously. A bunch of movies coming out. So let me know if you'd like to see a little bit of that as we kind of get through this summer without football. But in the meantime, let me know your thoughts about the Jaguars offseason as a whole. And don't ever forget, as always, the Jaguars. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss out on any videos about the Jaguars from my channel. Check out some of these other videos that I'm sure you'll be interested in. And again, never forget, it was always the Jags.